old saying, like, don't throw your pearls to swine. Yeah, I feel like that's kind of one of these things where if you didn't know what it was and where it came from and how old it is, like you wouldn't appreciate it the same way.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fred Minnick Show. We have an incredible show here for you today, and it's really all about a little bit of a rock rivalry and some great whiskey. But first, it's important you know that this podcast is brought to you by Rack House Whiskey Club. Rack House Whiskey Club is a Whiskey of the Month club on a mission to uncover the best flavors and stories that craft distilleries across the country have to offer. They ship out full-size bottles, no sample sizes here, and cool merch directly to your door. And as always with Rack House Whiskey Club, membership shipping is free. It's my go-to to keep shelves stocked with interesting whiskeys from around the country. That's actually true. I am starting to have Rack House send boxes to artists, and we're doing live tastings from the boxes, so that's actually true. Go to rackhousewhiskeyclub.com to check it out. Use code FRED for $25 off your first box. That's code FRED for $25 off. Who likes saving money? rackhousewhiskeyclub.com. Okay, so we have Jonny Hawkins of Nothing More is awesome. I love him. I love his music, his song, Go to War. Just like I used to like listen to it when I was working out. That was on my playlist, and that was usually I'd be listening to Go to War when I'd be hitting the bench. Of course, I can't hit the gym anymore because we're in the middle of a pandemic and everything is closed. In fact, when this interview took place, it was at the onset of this whole pandemic stuff. So, yeah. It was right before we all really realized we were going to be locked up for a while. So we still had a little bit of spring in our step, thinking that, you know what, it's not going to be too bad. We got stuff we're doing and everything right now. So you get to hear Jonny talk about what he's been doing in the middle of quarantine. But really, I think that the headline of this episode, Jonny Hawkins is probably the most talented, or one of the most talented, new, lead singers in rock. Nothing More was up for a Grammy last year. They didn't get it. They should have, but they were up for a Grammy. Just incredibly talented, and for most of the world, they're new and they're so young. They've got so much talent in them, and so naturally, when you have such a really good, strong rock band that's got its own sound and is doing great, and then you have other bands coming up the scene that are young, the media likes to kind of pit them and compare each other and, kind of evoke discussion. Well, Jonny actually said some things about Greta Van Fleet some time ago, and on this podcast, he went on about it. He actually described why he's been critical of Greta Van Fleet in the past. So if you are a rock fan, if you are someone who loves the history of music and all that, I'm not saying it's going down that road, but we've all seen band rivalries throughout time. The one in my lifetime that, stands out the most is Metallica and Guns N' Roses. There's been many documentaries on that one. I'm not saying Greta Van Fleet and Nothing More or anything like that, but I think it's a very interesting, very, very interesting rivalry to watch. Now, I'm not going to do a trivia question this week because it's extraordinarily long, and I'm not going to cut the interview. It's a great interview, but I do have a great question that I put out on Twitter, and I want you to think about it, and I want you to write me in and let me know what artist you would bring back. So here's what I put out on Twitter. I just listened to Jeff Buckley's music, every song I could find. I wish he was still with us. Now, I don't know if you know this, but Jeff Buckley, drowned in the 1990s. What artist would you like to bring back if you could? Now, I'll read all those, or a lot of those answers up after the interview. So I hope you enjoy that. But first, And welcome to the show, Johnny. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me.
I've actually been, I told Clay before I came on, I was like, I am such a fan of this guy. I love what you do. I was very upset when you guys didn't win a Grammy. I'm just such a fan of Nothing More. You guys have really, really came onto the scene and just brought back original sound to rock. And I love it. I love it. I love everything that you guys do.
Hey, well, thank you. That means a lot. Definitely after years of hard work together, growing up together and playing for 10 people in little dive bars. And now we're finally, established and stuff. It's really good to hear.
So you guys also are like craftsmen, you do everything. I mean, you write, you produce, you build your own equipment, what is it in you that you have to have you have to do everything? I mean, you could let something go and, let somebody a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, that's been the biggest challenge in our growth is that you do reach a point where you have to let other people start taking control and doing other jobs because you're a human being and you can only be so many places at once and you have limited time and energy. When we first started out, we didn't have anyone to really do anything for us. So we just adopted a very DIY mindset. If we didn't have a manager at the time, we would manage ourselves. We didn't have a booking agent. I would start booking our shows. And same thing with producing the records originally. And so over the years, some of those tasks that I think a lot of bands that maybe get some success a little earlier on, they kind of get used to other people doing those jobs right away. Whereas with us, we kind of got used to doing it ourselves. So it was a little, it's almost like we got to a point where we knew what we wanted to do better than someone we would hire. So with producing the records, that was something that stayed. Other things we let go of course, like booking our shows and management and things like that. But on the creative side, I just find that most of the time, if we hire someone else, I'm just going to be disappointed because I have a very clear vision in my head of what I want, and might as well just do it myself and hire people to do more specific things that will help that process happen faster. But honestly, it's more fun that way. Our bass player, Daniel, is also a big DIY guy. He fabricates all the metal stuff you see on stage. He's working on some mad scientist idea right now for our next show, which we're really excited about. But I don't know, it makes us way more involved in the heart of what we're doing, and we like that.
Yeah, it also, in a time where music can kind of become really fake. You have like auto tunes, and you have so much like computer engineered sound, electric music and what have you. It's kind of comforting to know that out there is like a real rock band, doing as much as they can.
Yeah. I mean, everything has gotten so easy to press a button and get a result nowadays. I mean, obviously, we use a lot of computers and technology to assist what we do, but we use them as tools rather than replacing something that isn't present, like on the human level. So yeah, we still like to put our heart and soul into things and really make a real. Oh, that was Kristen was yelling from downstairs. Do you need any shot glasses? I think I'm good, babe. I got the skull shot glass right here. I mean, you can bring some if you want. It could be fun.
Now I'm gonna dig this tasting. I don't think I've ever done a tasting out of skull shot glasses, but I've had some mead out of skull shot glasses.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this will be this is fun, and
I love
thanks, babe. She brought me one that's I don't know where we got this on the road, but I don't know if you can see it. Somebody put our logo on it. It's
Oh,
kind of
that's
fun.
sweet. Yeah.
Got a few of them like that.
I gotta ask, you got a teddy bear on the couch behind you. What is there a story there? It's just really standing out.
It is a stuffed animal that Kristen and Skylar got me when I was on the road for a long tour. And I forgot the name of the store, but it's one of those places where you build your own stuffed animal and they put their voices in it when you squeeze its paw. And basically, Kristen had this dream that she found an orange cat. And in the dream, I named him Blueberry. And about 6 months later, I was in Germany and I got a phone call with her and Skylar, and she told me she had some news. And I thought it was going to be bad news. I was all nervous. And turns out she FaceTimes and there's a little kitten on her chest. And she found this orange cat on the side of a highway. It was about to get hit by a bunch of cars. And sure enough, brought it home. It's been our cat ever since. His name's Blueberry. And that was pre-Blueberry. That was the avatar, if you will. And so I'd take that on the road with me. It was just kind of their little way of giving me something to take, a little piece of them to take on the road.
That's awesome. I'm glad I asked that because it's just cute. Oh, there's you know.
Yeah, he finally has a spot. That's Kristen says that's her couch. So I'll be working on music and she'll be chilling on her phone, kind of listening.
Love it.
Every once in a while she'll chime in and be like, "That sucks. You need to redo that part."
So when you look at your career, you've worked your butt off to get here where you are now. Are there any very particular moments where you just kind of look back and you're like, you know what? That was the moment where I knew I made it.
There's been a few moments like that were, I guess, more specific kind of bucket list items that I'd always imagined in my mind. But I think the biggest turning point was when we played Aftershock in Sacramento in, God, maybe 2013 or 2014. And we weren't signed yet. We just playing this festival at all was a big deal for us. And some band couldn't make it the following day. And the head of the whole festival was Danny Wimmer from Danny Wimmer Presents. He watched our set. We played in front of a few hundred people on a side stage. He came up, shook my hand. First person to shake my hand right off the stage. Said later that day, he said, "How would you like to play the main stage tomorrow?" And that was about 10 to 13,000 people at the time. And at that time, we hadn't played in front of that many people. I was like, hell yeah. And so that to me was the biggest turning point when we walked on stage. Then there was all these business people, label reps and agents and managers and all on the side with their arms crossed, kind of like, I don't know, that was our moment to prove ourselves kind of a thing. So that was the biggest turning point. But there was a lot of moments along the way. Like when we were in Japan, I remember pinching myself, and my mom used to always tell me stories about Europe growing up as a kid. And so when we were touring Europe and playing all these big shows, I was kind of seeing all these parts of the world that I had been told stories about as a kid. And it was kind of cool to see them for real.
Wow. Now you're on the road a lot, or at least in the past you've been on the road a lot. We're all kind of confined right now. But what do you drink when you're on the road? What do you sip on after you've had a set?
I'm one of those guys that goes through phases. I've never been like a hardcore any one particular thing. Like, some guys are whiskey guys and that's what they stick to. Some people love tequila, whatever. Lately I've been in kind of a tequila kick. But I've gone through a kind of a bourbon phase when I was liking it. But most of the time I'll sip on a beer. I've noticed it sits a little better with my stomach after a show.
Mm-hmm.
And the craziest thing, when I'm after any kind of live performance, I'll just have one beer and I'll feel like I drank four. It's because of the blood pumping and the adrenaline and just like the heightened state of activity. It hits me like totally different. So I can just have one and get the effect of four basically. but right now, God, what am I drinking? You're gonna totally make fun of me for this or call me a pussy or something, but I've been I've been liking these White Claws. I know
Uh,
that's a cardinal sin in this world, but
Johnny.
kick me off your show. Ain't no law with the claw, brother.
There ain't no law with the claw, but boy, yeah,
Uh, but
you're too cool to be drinking White Claw. Come on.
I just pour it into another glass and disguise it so nobody knows. But deep
Yeah,
down, my conscience knows.
you know it's really bad when you're hiding the fact that you're drinking White Claw. It's like, I mean, you already know, like, you're gonna get called out for it, so you're gonna hide it.
I can't help it, man. It's so light and refreshing and but lately I've been drinking 1800 tequila.
Tequila, yeah, that's not bad tequila at all.
Yeah.
That's good tequila.
Yeah.
Well,
But
I sent you some. Man, I sent you like a murderer's row of really good whiskey.
oh
And
boy.
I'm just going to read down from the top that the first one that you have is Old Schenley Rye. Now, I want to show you this bottle.
Number 1 right here. All right.
This bottle is
Oh
from
yeah.
this is from the 1940s. Okay, so this was
For real.
this was bottled. I think this was bottled in 49. It's 8-year old, 8-year-old, 8-year 40. So yeah, it was bottled in the 40s. The label is, it's really old. The
That's
label
awesome.
peeled off a little bit, but this is one of those bottles. Like, I'm a collector. Like, I go around and I get old bottles of whiskey, and I'm going to read you the names on the back of this label. A.B. Blanton. So that's Albert Blanton. That's the guy who Blanton's is named after, which is an iconic bourbon that's out right now.
Okay.
This guy was like, from if you were to compare him to, to music, this guy would be like the manager for Elvis. He was like like an owner. He was a really important businessman. He wasn't a distiller, but he was a really strong businessman. Robert Nance, who was a like a plant manager, and then W.R. Nebelkamp, who would be kind of like, at that time, would have been like Joe DiMaggio, like a really good distiller. There would be other distillers who you would consider better than him, but he would, at that time, was one of the best. So those three gentlemen selected this bottle here, and here we are opening it.
So that's what I have some out of that bottle.
Yeah. So that's
Wow.
that's
I
our
feel
first.
I feel pretty damn special right now. That's awesome.
I mean, it's a rare one, and
Wow.
I'm gonna pour mine right now.
I used to drink Basil Hayden.
Okay.
It's called Basil Hayden. Yeah.
Yeah, Basil Hayden.
Similar look to the bottle.
It actually does. They did kind of create that bottle in a classic look. Looks like now.
I'm supposed to take this thing off.
I guess there's a the lid got stuck on there. Oh, there we go.
Inside part of the lid, second lid.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a fail safe, I guess.
Guess so. All right.
Now, with these older whiskeys, I want you to think about this. They made whiskey differently back then. The grains were different. They were acquiring grains that had not even heard about genetically modified ingredients. The water was different. This was before there was a lot of filtration, in a lot of these places. The wood that this was aged in, this would have largely been like first growth oak. And so, this is a blast of the past. This is the 1940s when, very different time.
Wow.
Now let's do a little tutorial on how to taste a little bit here.
All right.
So I like to swirl it around a little bit and just kind of look at it. So that's, it just kind of get your palate and your nose kind of prepared to take it in. But you just swirl it around, look at it, and, bring it to your nose. And when you bring it to your nose, smell it with your mouth open a little bit. By smelling it with your mouth open, you're taking on, you're able to open up your olfactory and not just get pounded by the alcohol.
Hmm.
And you can, and you can pick up a lot. So like what I'm smelling here,
Yeah, it's different.
there's like some licorice, like a black licorice, really strong on that. And then
Yeah.
after that, some pepper. I like some nice little pepper.
Wow, you can tell that.
Yeah. What do you smell? You smell anything?
I couldn't say, honestly. I couldn't say. With the alcohol in it, it kind of cover like I can tell I think I can tell kind of the licorice. Let me pour a little bit more. I didn't pour a whole lot. I didn't eat that much this morning, so I'm being pretty conservative on the amount here.
Just
But
do me a favor and don't blame me for when you get in trouble later.
I brought some food just to get in my stomach a little bit as we go, but I want to be like chewing on the microphone here.
I know you're a healthy guy too, so you're very health conscious.
Sometimes. Yeah, let me smell this again.
Now when we taste, you just want to, so this is where a lot of people get in trouble, right? When they taste, they just shoot it back. They just like
Right.
just kill it, knock it back. But really what you should do is you just put a little bit on your tongue and feel it on that tip of your tongue and let it walk itself back and kind of drip down the jawline a little bit. And just by doing like a simple little tasting like that, it's not going to affect you. It's that third, 15th drink that will get you.
All right.
So this is an 8-year-old, and this was distilled in Pennsylvania at a distillery that's no longer in existence.
I like that.
This is a very rare whiskey, and it's a pleasure to sip it with you. It's pretty complicated. Cheers.
Cheers. Wow. I like that one.
Yeah, that I don't want to stop sipping that. It's like almost like tasting's over, right? We can just kick back and talk about music and more on
that one's nice.
on this. It is really good. And you know what? I've had this before, and it tastes better right now than it has in the past.
Really?
Yeah. The thing about it is like when you taste something, what you taste in that moment is different than what you'll taste in 3 days. Like I would imagine it's very similar to like when you're playing music. You're definitely going to have good days and you're going to have bad days, right? It's like you're going to have a variance of like a track star is going to have a variance of like how well they run.
Right.
So as a muscle.
Yeah, it makes sense. Some days I feel like I can pick things out, like you were just sensing different smells. I mean, I can walk into a room and go, who got the basil out, or who got the, paprika, or I can pick it up super quick. And then some days I just feel like I can't tell anything.
Well, here's the other part is that it's all about, tapping into your muscle memory and like understanding the things that you've tasted, things that you had growing up, your comfort foods, might have been mama's apple pie or could have been cornbread. You can find those in whiskeys or really anything that you're tasting. There are flavor maps in every single one of these spirits, and it's on like each individual is going to have a very different experience. And we can both agree that something is sweet, but my sweet may very well be different than yours. Like I may get a caramel apple. You may get a salted caramel chew, and it reminds you of the time you were on the dock and with your girlfriend, and you sing her a guitar or sing her a song with a solo guitar moment or something. I don't know, But so we all have like these memory triggers associated with taste, and
Mm.
if you can find those. So you know
Wow.
the joy of it all is tracking down what it is that you remember about what you tasted.
Yeah. To me, one of the coolest parts is also just knowing that, like knowing a little bit of the history, because I feel like you can just, what the old saying, like, don't throw your pearls to swine. Um, yeah, I feel like that's kind of one of these things where if you didn't know what it was and where it came from and how old it is, like you wouldn't appreciate it the same way. Um, but when I'm drinking and I'm thinking all this, everything you just told me, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, this is something from that long ago, from a different era, different
Yeah.
people alive, different events going on, and it's here in the present. It's
Yep.
that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah. And when I was I try to put for all my guests, I put together like a unique whiskey lineup. And I've always we've never met before, but I've just through your music, I've always thought you're probably a very cerebral person, someone
Yeah.
who's very much a thinker. And so this lineup is actually curated based on like kind of my impression of you, of like just kind of being a deep person looking for meaning in things. And every one of these bottles has a unique meaning to whiskey. And number two,
Huh.
this is the Elijah Craig barrel proof. This is actually a new release. This is one of my front runners for American Whiskey of the Year for 2020 right now.
Really?
It's a barrel proof batch A120, and it is super, super, super good. In fact, this happens sometimes. The company pulled one of my quotes, and they put that in their press release. So when I got their press release, it was leading with what I thought about it, which I thought was kind of weird, getting a quote of myself in the press release.
So this would you say this is your choice out of all of them? If you had to pick
Well,
one?
no, no, it's not.
Okay.
No. But let me tell you about the history of Elijah Craig. Elijah Craig is he was thought to be, the creator of bourbon, and really he was not. But
Hmm.
there was a mention of him in a book in the 1800s, and people started thinking that he may have been the first creator of bourbon. And to be bourbon, it has to be predominantly corn, and what makes it really stand out is the new charred oak barrel.
Okay.
And they always said that Elijah Craig discovered the new charred oak process when there was a barn fire in his barn where he stored his barrels, and that the insides of the barrels got burnt and charred, but the outside did not. And it's just one of those stories that just goes to show you that American whiskey is so full of shit. They will just they'll spin a yarn as best they can, but marketing runs heavily in this. That is not
Yeah.
judging on the quality, but they're
Yeah.
they're mostly full of shit.
Yeah, I think marketing goes a pretty long way in certain spheres of human activity. Like certain things are just, like I'm trying to think of an example. This is a horrible example, but in sports, if you're playing a game and one team scores more points than the other, they win. That it's pretty simple, it's cut and dry. But when it comes to things that have a subjective element, much like music or tasting bourbons, um, people a lot of times I think because there's a subjective element, nothing about it is objective. But I totally disagree. I couldn't disagree more. I think that the subjective element gives it some variance, but um, a lot of times because you have that element, marketing can take advantage of that blind spot in human beings' minds or ignorance. And placebo is a very strong factor in things in this realm. You basically suggest something to someone in the right way and they can experience it differently because they don't even know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
A funny example of that, I'm sure this is parallel to tasting, quality bourbons or quality whiskey is when you're in the studio, there's an old trick as a producer where the band says, we want this or we want that. And let's say you have 20 years of experience and this band has 0 in producing albums. And they say they want this and that. And that's really not an intelligent request the way they're saying it because they don't really know what they're talking about. What they would do was just pretend like they're doing a bunch of stuff and then just turn up the mix a little bit, just the volume, or press a button that makes it go up 5 dB. And they go, how about that? And notoriously, everyone would go, oh, that sounds way better. And pretty unethical if you're recording a band and they're paying you money, but it points to the fact that the human ear can only tell so many things unless it's trained. And so they don't know what it is specifically. And so when you turn the volume up, the low frequencies and the high frequencies accentuate. And so human beings interpret that as better. It sounds better to the human ear just to turn it up. And I think there's a parallel there with, tasting whiskeys and things. If you don't know what you're looking for, or don't know anything about it, I think marketing can kind of use that blind spot, if you will.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and this kind of goes to like where we are right now, like where our world is in some ways ran by influencers and people who don't really have a lot of merit, but have a lot of say in our society right now. There's been a lot of studies that show that if you tell someone that something is good and that person respects the person or has an affection for that person, then they will just think it's good blindly without, just because of that endorsement. It's almost like a lot of human beings just don't know how to think for themselves. Like we've lost our ability to critical think.
Totally. Yeah. And I totally agree that there's a large number of people that probably just aren't good at critical thinking in general. And then there's this other segment of people that maybe are good at critical thinking within their sphere of expertise, something they do every day or their job or something they care more about, but they might offload their opinions to people they look up to or who they consider experts in other areas where they might be a critical thinker, but in this area they know that they're ignorant, so they just kind of go with the authority on the matter.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's a lot of different flavors of that happening.
Now, the second glass that we have here, this one, I'm going to warn you, this one is nearly 140 proof. It's 136 proof. So
I put this one in the skull.
Yeah. This one's packing some heat.
Oh boy.
Now, the nose I'm getting on this is molasses, tobacco.
Tobacco, really?
Tobacco, caramel, and oak.
Yeah, this one feels again, I don't have that level of palate probably that you do, or especially today, but I do get a warm feeling or sweeter or something. Like when I was breathing in or smelling the other one, it had a stronger, bite or something. This one's just kind of like gentle.
It feels more mellow. And the irony of that, this is a lot higher in proof than the previous one.
That's interesting because you would think the opposite.
Yeah. Whoa. How's it feel on the tongue?
I think I took that one a little too hard. I didn't take your advice, like letting it drip down. I was like, well, let me try that again. Wow. That one definitely is stronger.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel. Whew.
You might want to take a drink of water after that one.
Yeah, but it feels God, it's almost like a warm blanket of, like if you took a really strong painkiller in the hospital or something, and you just feel that like your nerves kind of shutting down in a good way. It's just like a warm blanket comes over you. That's what it feels like on my tongue.
You know, what's interesting is that whiskey was originally a painkiller. You know, so if you're about to go into surgery, they'd dose you up on whiskey.
I would, if I was going to surgery, I'd choose this one, and it's got a nice after. My mouth just feels nice, and this is a weird way to describe it, but it feels smooth, like in my mouth, not the taste, like on my throat or anything. Just the feeling in my mouth is like smoother.
The flavors are there, you know, and that's where, like, if you are not familiar with like tasting whiskey and you don't have experience with sipping on it, you can get yourself in trouble real quick with something like this, you know.
Oh yeah.
It's so good.
Ooh. Yeah, I like that one a lot.
All right, so yeah, you can see why it's one of my contenders for the year. Now, number 3, we're going to switch it up for a second, and we're going to go to a rum.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, going to go to a rum, and it's Foursquare port cask finish.
What did you say it was?
It's Foursquare. This is made in Barbados, and I believe this is the best rum distillery in the world right now.
Really?
And they finished it in port barrels out from Portugal, and so this would have spent time in bourbon and port barrels. It is 9 years old, and rum kind of has this really bad reputation because there's a lot of people who take advantage of kind of that consumer base we were talking about earlier, in that they sugar up their rums and they put a pirate on there and they just kind of like saturate it with marketing, and the rum's really just, you know, sugared up vodka, but not this stuff. This is real rum. Yeah, oh, that's a good shot. He's going to the shot glass, ladies and gentlemen. Do you notice a difference amongst the different glasses of like how it hits your nose or how it hits your palate? Because you're actually doing your own little experiment there with different glassware.
Oh, I didn't know the glassware had that much of an effect. Does it?
Yeah, it can.
Really? Is it just because the surface area or something? It's spread out more, or?
Yeah. So that your first glass was really open, right? And so like more of that alcohol could have like escaped or could have went to a different path. And then on the taste part, the glass will shoot to your tongue in a very different fashion. Each one of them will be different. So the wider it's out, the more it will hit your palate. It's kind of like a slide, you know, like the more narrow the slide gets, the more narrow the water comes out.
That makes sense. This was just a resources issue. I just grabbed what was clean in my house. I didn't have that level of detail yet. This is an educational experience for me, actually.
Yeah.
So,
well, this won't be the last. We'll do this again sometime. But
sounds good. And next time, I'm not going to schedule it in the middle of the day.
Now, rum comes from, you know, bourbon is a whiskey. It comes from corn. Rum comes from molasses, which is a byproduct of making sugar. And they'll take that, ferment it, and distill it. And you can get a lot of those molasses and those sweeter characteristics out of it.
Is that I was going to say rum always tends to be a little sweeter.
Well, it tends to be sweeter. It does come from the sugar cane, but a lot of the rum is sweeter because the people who make the rum will add things like honey or syrups or sugar to it prior to bottling. So they intentionally try to make it sweeter. And in my opinion, what that actually is trying to do is cover up for the fact that they had really bad distillate and bad distillation going into their, to make their product. Whereas this one adds nothing.
Yeah, no, it's nice and sweet. I like it, but this is one I think for me that I would have a much smaller dose of. Like if something has that sweet quality, which to me is a little sweeter, I'll start. I can only do it in smaller doses. I get kind of tired of the sweet or something. But it's good.
In Barbados, you ever played in Barbados?
No.
Done a Caribbean tour?
I've been into the Caribbean a few times, but never played there.
Yeah, that's that market oddly likes country music.
Really?
Yeah, they had like all these country music dance halls in St. Lucia and in Barbados, and it's just like, this makes no sense. The home of Rihanna, and you're doing the two-step.
That is funny. That's that kind of similar to when I was in the UK. We played there many times, but they have an affinity for Southern rock. I guess to them it's a little more exotic in a sense, whereas in the U.S., when you hear Southern rock, it's a little more time capsuled to the 70s, I would say, maybe.
Yeah.
70s, 80s, and kind of that classic rock feel. But to them, it's it's more exotic. Whereas here, it's just it's Southern rock. It's whatever.
I guess you got a handful of people with like a Southern rock feel, like maybe Blackberry Smoke and Kid Rock, people like that. But namely, you think of Leonard Skinner, with that,
right? Yeah, the band that was real big over there was who was it? Is it Blackstone Cherry?
Okay, yeah.
Is that the name? Sorry, we've never played with them. I hope I'm not fucking up the name, but yeah, they were like huge over there, and I was really surprised.
And so you played in the UK a lot?
Yeah, we've been there probably about, let's say, 8 to 10 times, maybe.
Man, I look at the state where the state we're in right now, and it's just like the thought of not being able to go to a festival, for the next like couple of months, it's like painful,
I mean, for me, it's not, but I've been on the road for so many years now that I'm like, wait, stay home? Hell yeah.
So this is a little bit of a welcome break in some ways.
Everybody's talking about how isolated and secluded the quarantine, making all these jokes and memes. And over here, me and my producer friends who pretty much live in a dark lit studio room all day and night, we're like, this is exactly what it's like to make an album. So I don't know what everybody's talking about. It's pretty normal over here.
And you've been, and you focus, you probably get a little bit of a chance to focus on some new music too.
Yeah, it's been a double-edged sword. I mean, it's been good because this is what we were doing anyway. Thankfully, we didn't have like a giant tour booked, and if we did, that would suck. But we were going to be working on an album anyway, kind of locking ourselves away. The only challenge is that some of our family is our home where they otherwise Kristen would be at work and Skylar would be at school, so I would have the house to myself. So that part's a tiny bit of a challenge, but they've been pretty good, so I can still focus and close the door.
Yeah. Drink a little whiskey.
All right, let's do it.
All right, so this right here, I haven't tasted it today, but this right here is my leader of the pack for best whiskeys of 2019. This is a style of whiskey that is kind of on the rise. and it's a blend of bourbon and rye. So what High West, which is a Utah distillery, did is that they took stocks from a bourbon distillery and a rye distillery, and they blended them together. So that would kind of be, to put it in a musical sense, this would be like combining rock and country or country and rap. You know, it's a blend of two different genres, and very respectfully comes out nicely.
Huh. All right. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. Let's try the hybrid here. The combo.
Mm. I can take it by our silence.
Nice.
I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah. Yeah. That one was nice. That one had more bite on the back end to me. Like it was like,
so let's analyze that for a second. When we talk about alcohol burn and bite and everything,
yeah.
there's a component to whiskeys that we consider spice. They're like pepper, jalapeno, cinnamon, like a baking spice. And sometimes that can feel like that, like it's a bite. If it's like the 9-volt batteries hitting your tongue,
yeah, that's more of a spice to me. Because it doesn't like right when it touches my tongue, like the one that was the higher proof, I could feel it really almost that not numbing, but where my tongue feels different. I can feel it immediately on contact. This one is more of that effervescent kind of spice floating around on the back end of it or something.
and so this is High West Bourye, and they call it a limited sighting. If you take a look at the bottle there, they've got like a jackrabbit on there with.
You know what? That's what. Remember America's Funniest Home Videos when you were a kid? They had that little jackrabbit with the, what did they call him? He had a name or something, and it was like the camera point of view of the horns and the rabbit, and it was like running around. I hadn't thought of that forever.
The jackalope.
The jackalope.
Yeah, the jackalope. Yeah.
Bob Saget as the host.
Yeah, who would have thought that Bob Saget would turn out to be like such a pervy dude? You know, he was like a cool guy. Like you were growing up, he was like Mr. Rogers in some way, and then you come out and he's like gets on Twitter and then does all these other things, and it's like
such is growing up, and
right?
you see the truth behind things. You're like, wait, what?
So the next one I have for you, this is number 5, it's Jack Daniels. This is a single barrel. It's barrel proof, and the thing about this is like I like to have people taste this because everyone always thinks Jack Daniels is the same old, but they actually have a lot of really, really great whiskey that's really developed for like connoisseurs. But to create like that basic everyday Jack Daniels, which is probably the most consistent whiskey in the entire world, you know, that takes a lot of volume. But they have a lot of good whiskey there.
We did a tour of their distillery when we were on the road.
And I'll tell you that Jack Daniels to me is rock and roll. Like they are, I can think of photos of like Jimmy Page and Robert Plant drinking Jack Daniels backstage. Obviously, you know, Guns N' Roses having it on their Appetite of Destruction cover. And there's just any number of, you know, rock and roll stories with Jack Daniels.
Oh yeah. No, that bottle is iconic.
But it's probably not fair that I put it in this tasting because it was up against some juggernauts. So let's see if it holds up. Well, yeah. Got you right in the chest.
I got some burn on that one. I don't know if that's the right technical right word or whatever, but
Yeah, it'll work.
Yeah, it's
if it hits you in the chest. So this is how I define smooth. Smooth is one of these like terms that everybody uses like all the time, usually inappropriately in some ways, but it's like if it burns like a real burning like 9-volt battery thing kind of burns at any point on the way down to your belly, then it's not smooth for you. But what is smooth for me as a grizzled, whiskey drinker is definitely different than what's going to be smooth for a White Claw drinker. So
right over here, Exhibit A.
Yeah, that one did hit a little bit in my chest as well, but still tasty.
Like that one to me has a almost like when our drummer Ben is reeling up super spicy hot sauces, like million Scoville units or whatever kind of stuff, the ghost peppers and scorpion peppers. And in a similar way, when you start getting into that super hot range, some of the hottest stuff it's not so much that it's so hot right off the bat, it's that it just keeps climbing the whole time. There's a curve, whereas some of the less spicy stuff will kind of go whoop and then it just drops. This one to me, over the course of 5 seconds, I guess, it just had a constant climb as far as the a burn feeling or whatever, whereas the other ones were a little more of a I don't know if I'm describing it properly, but that's what it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think you described that really, really well. You basically talked about an ascending burn pattern. Yeah, that was good.
Huh. I didn't know that. That's
yeah. That was actually I was like, that's a great way to put it. I've actually never heard anyone describe it like that. But yeah, crushed it.
Yeah, the other ones seemed to have more of a curve to it, whereas this one just felt like it was just the burn was just kind of growing and growing and growing and growing. And
all right, so I hate to do this to you, but I almost feel like I have to. Well, what's your favorite out of this bunch?
So far, I would definitely say, it's between 1 and 2.
Okay, so between like an extinct 1940s rye and Elijah Craig barrel proof A120, and that 1940s rye is Old Schenley Rye from Pennsylvania.
I think if I had to pick with a gun to my head, it would be number 2. But I'd have to sip on it a little more delicately than I did.
Yeah. Well, I'll see if I can get them to send you a whole bottle so you can sip on it at your leisure. Yeah, I'm sure they would do that for you. But so you picked. So there you go, folks. Jonny Hawkins in this tasting of Old Schenley Rye, Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A120, Foursquare Port Barrel Finish Rum, a High West 2019 Bourye, and the latest single barrel proof from Jack Daniels. He picks Elijah Craig. Yeah, how about that? That's awesome.
My choice. I like this because I didn't even. It really did remove a lot of the marketing from, even though you gave me a little background and there was still an idea in my head. The fact that I'm drinking out of these bottles that look like this,
yeah,
it takes a bit of the placebo and the marketing out for me when I'm looking at it. That, yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, they were. I poured those bottles and wrote those labels, so that's a guarantee that there's no marketing there, but a lot of love. So I feel like we both have this desire to bash on marketing for a moment here, if we can. Like,
oh yeah.
What's a place in society that you think marketing has really, really hurt our society?
Oh, great question. I mean, the most obvious one I think is politics and the public sphere. I mean, I guess politics is a flavor of marketing that's especially distasteful.
Mm-hmm.
But it's unfortunately a reality. It's not like as an individual you're going to change that overnight. Except I will say this: not getting political here, not being positive or negative, but I would say Trump is probably the most out of the box character we've had in a long time. You know, people listening love him or hate him, don't care. But just on that alone, as far as the marketing side, that was a bit of a wild card, I think, that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it's like he broke away from, I guess, the term that we use, presidential.
Yes, yeah,
And it was like, he's like, I don't give a shit. Fuck you.
right. And I don't think that he's devoid of marketing, or using. If anything, I mean, he's a figure who was a branding person. I mean, he's branded himself. When he ran his campaign, he branded disparaging names about opposing candidates. He was a brander. That was kind of his thing. So he still used it in a totally different way that seemed very, like you said, not presidential, not the status quo political, traditional way that they've learned to talk to the public and kind of be squirmy or political. I think that's a very obvious realm that we all kind of know. It's just one of those evils that's just it's not really going to go away. It's just the nature of when you're dealing with large groups of people and disseminating information. There's ways to do that in a way that kind of tricks certain things in people's minds. I'd say music is another one, where people will. I got a lot of got a lot of shit for this online. I think it was like last year, but I was pretty outspoken about my distaste for a band called Greta Van Fleet. And of course, it's not a very good position to take. I can see why from the outside looking in, because they're younger. They're, from my opinion, they're a very talented band, especially for their age. Total props there to them. But as far as what they presented to the world in the music realm, it was a complete repackaging. And in the business world, they call it white labeling. Basically, someone creates a business and builds something from the ground up, or a service or a product, and they just slap a different name on the front of it, and now it looks like a different company. But it's exactly the same thing, exactly the same product. And I felt like they did that with Led Zeppelin. It was from the clothing to the artwork to the lyrical approach, using words like mama, which nobody in their generation uses that word authentically. That was something completely connected to a band in the 70s. And it, from my point of view, it had gone beyond a time capsuling kind of throwback, like a band like Jet or something, where it was like, yeah, it's obvious that they're doing this kind of cool throwback classic rock, but a modern twist. To me, it felt too narrowed into one specific band than it was like narrowed into a time capsule of a time or an era. So that was kind of my critical issue with it. But to the public, there's the other side. So that's just a critical point of view as an artist myself, because I make art and I make music. But when you're a consumer, you have a very different point of view. You just listen to things that make you feel good, and I can't fault you for that. If it's almost like the White Claw thing. It's like, we could shit on it, but if it makes you feel good and it makes you happy and you want to crack one open at the end of the day, then go for it. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever. So I would always say that. I was like, when I'm bashing on this, I'm not bashing on the consumer or the people who want to enjoy what they want to enjoy. I don't care. Enjoy your life. But as an artist, to another artist, that was my issue. So I think that's another example where it was just, to me, marketing, where it just kind of, I don't know, it just took something that had already been and just white labeled it. But I don't know, man. Where do you think's a particularly bad part of society with marketing is your part?
I mean, if you take a look at where we are in terms of, health, we are in a world of extremes. You're either as fat as fuck or, fit as you can be, and it's like we have, and it's not necessarily a marketing thing as much as it is I guess I look at, so marketing, when you get into the governance of municipalities and counties, they have these things called zoning, and you have like Walmart coming in and knocking out small businesses all around, the country. You have McDonald's coming in and just wiping out like a cafe all around the country. That's been going on for a long time. And the marketing that bothers me is kind of like is a little bit of the false narrative that these kinds of large corporate, growth chains, if you will, are good for, small communities. And when in fact they kind of hurt them. You see the end of smaller coffee shops, diners and what have you. So I don't know. I mean, and I guess as a member of the media for the past, in some way, shape, or form, for the past like 15, 20 years, I see a lot of different viewpoints. And I'll tell you too, I was a soldier in Iraq, and I saw marketing being spun all around when we were in Iraq. First, we were fighting terrorists, then we were fighting insurgents, and then we were partners with the same people who were trying to kill us. I mean, it's just like, that there's probably no better marketing in the history of our country than what's gone on since 9/11 with like how we justify the various wars we're in. So
that's a really good one. By the way, thank you for your service. I know it's maybe cliche to say that, but I respect.
I appreciate
I had no idea.
And the thing is too, is like, it's not something that I don't lead with that, but it is, I'm very proud of that service, and I'm very proud of the people I served with. So when you say thank you to me, I think of like, I take that and I apply it to everybody I served with, because a lot of great human beings that I served with from all over the world.
That's awesome. Yeah, my most of my family's military. I popped out a musician, so I don't know. I don't know what happened, but all on my dad's side, my dad, my granddad, my great granddad, my uncle, my great uncle, all of them were a lot of officers in the military and all the wars in the last 100 years. Yeah, so I definitely have a respect and for that. And I think that's interesting to bring up, though, the just how you put words around something just drastically changes the feelings behind it. And that is one aspect of humanity that I don't blame people for it. I think it's just an unfortunate reality of being creatures that have to mumble out sounds that mean things. The fact that we use words to operate it just is what it is. And marketing and people using words in malicious ways or manipulative ways, I think, are just inevitable. So I don't think it's human beings' fault. It just is. But especially like the example you gave with how you market or dress up a terrorist or an insurgent or an enemy, whatever word you use with different implications. I saw something the other day that was kind of interesting because I don't usually have this point of view, but it did hit me as kind of true. Where it said when a black guy commits a crime, he's an animal or a thug or a this and that. But then as soon as a white kid shoots up a school or whatever, he's mentally ill.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because I don't like getting on the racial boat. I don't think it matters. I think people are individuals, and there's crazy black people and there's crazy white people and there's great black people and great white people and all, every other race, of course. I think we all kind of know that. But it was an interesting point that how it's talked about reflects something. I don't know what it is, but it's like mental illness. I saw it even in my own family and the ways problems were talked about with certain members of my family. I was like, you wouldn't use those words with a stranger, but you're using it with this person just because they're part of your blood.
Mm-hmm.
So something in me felt very unfair. And I get that you can't know everyone else in the world like you know your family. But to jump to that conclusion that everyone else is an animal, but because I know this person, it's mental illness, or it's some kind of more justifiable or acceptable form of fucking up, and it's like, you're just putting different words on it, but it's the same action, it's the same outcome, it's the same effect on everyone around them. So, I don't know, that part's interesting to me.
Words matter, man. They matter. They matter, and they can have a resounding effect on someone, man.
Yeah.
But man, I got to thank you for coming on. What a pleasure it is to sit down and speak with you virtually. I feel like there's a lot of the world's problems we could solve over a couple of drinks.
It just takes some really good, strong bourbon. I think we got it figured out. Yeah. Let's get Congress some of these bottles. And
actually, my Congressman Yarmouth, he created a caucus, the Bourbon Caucus, where he brings in members of the Congress, and it's nonpartisan, and they drink bourbon together and they talk. And so, like,
that's awesome.
It's a real thing. Like, they're trying.
Hey, that's great.
So tell everybody what's next for Nothing More. What can and how can people check you all out right now?
Man, excuse me. What is next for Nothing More at the moment is a new album. We are working really hard in the studio right now, and we're quarantined just like everyone else, and basically looking to get this thing out as soon as we can. But we're a very slow cooker kind of band. We'd rather the soup be tasty than fast. But we decided that we're going to do something a little special this time around, because we do take a little bit longer on our albums than most bands. We really give it time, and we're going to do this thing called The Few, which is basically an online group that we're going to open up to a limited number of people that will get to every month kind of have a fly on the wall perspective of us making the album. They'll get to hear some of the music that's being created in some of its infancy and the different stages of its evolution. They'll also get to kind of just see inside the process. So we're recording everything we're doing right now. I have multiple cameras in this room set up, and kind of a little bit of a Truman Show kind of a thing where you just kind of get to check in and see what's going on. And we're going to have a lot of other special things, but we'll be launching that in the next month or two. I think we'll be opening up a kind of a pre-sale, kind of reserve your spot thing here in the next few weeks. So keep your eye out for that. It's called The Few. And other than that, we're just trying to get this album out and get back on the road and see all you wonderful people.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait for that moment, and I'm gonna have to check that out. All the 360 camera setup at some point, but
Yeah. I don't have them turned on at the moment. Otherwise, I'd scroll through some cameras here. But yeah, well, you get a little inside picture of us making the album and see how the sausage is
awesome.
made.
I love how you can bring everybody into your life like that. And Jonny, thanks again for coming on the show. And I'll send you some more whiskey and keep this conversation going.
Cheers. I'm having another sip of this one. The
Right.
Elijah. Wait, was it Elijah?
Yeah. Elijah Craig.
I almost said Elijah Wood, and I was like, that's an actor. Wait a minute.
It's funny. I got an Elijah Wood story for you.
All right, let's finish on that. I'm curious.
I was in Ireland with Elijah, and at Bushmills because he's a DJ, and I was there on some whiskey stuff, and I took him to an American whiskey bar, and he had a little bit much with me, and he got really like the next day he couldn't even look at me. He was so pissed off at me because he had so much.
He was like, you.
I have that effect on people, and that's why I said that you can't be mad at me. You can't blame me if you get in trouble after this, because
it's I will not hold you accountable. I will hold myself accountable as I finish off all these still undrinking.
It might lead to a special record. Who knows? But
there we go. Get some liquid inspiration here. Thank you.
Cheers, man.
Hey, thanks again. Seriously, this was awesome. Educational and
pleasure was mine.
tasty. Cheers. See you later, brother.
See ya.
Wasn't that a great interview with Jonny? Again, I can't tell you how cool that was for me, because I listen to his music all the time, and I'm still kind of finding the path of this podcast and how I interview musicians and everything. And this was my first one that I felt like I've hit it. Like I've nailed it. Yeah. So this interview has been sitting in the can for a little bit. I agreed to kind of hold it until they were ready with their members only platform, basically because they can't tour, they can't get out. You're seeing a lot of musicians create like membership within their own website. So you can go to nothingmore.net and join their members only area. I highly recommend it. They're an incredible band, and they have fun interactions together. But it's called The Few with a really cool looking E. Now they definitely disclose that it's in beta form. I mean, everything right now is in beta, from YouTube live stream members only, to stuff like this. But I think it's really cool that they're trying to stay in touch with their fans. And, if you love rock, if Nothing More is not on your radar, you have got to start listening to them. I absolutely love their music. So as I stated before the interview, there's no trivia question this week. However, I did put something out on Twitter that kind of like sparked a lot of reaction. And it was, just listen to Jeff Buckley's music. Every song I could find, I wish he was still with us. What artist would you like to bring back if you could? A lot of votes for John Lennon. The Rev had some. George Harrison had a bunch. Kurt Cobain had quite a few. Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Tom Petty, David Bowie. Basically, just a ton of votes for rock. George Harrison, Tom Perth, Prince, Sharon Jones, and Jeff Buckley had quite a few too. A lot for Jimi Hendrix. But the number one vote getter, from what I could tell, was Prince. And I still can't believe Prince is gone. He was such a incredible musician. He was amazing. But you just look at all that lost talent. And I think that's why this podcast means so much to me, because I'm getting the opportunity to interview these brilliant musicians, in 10 to 20 years. I think we're going to look at Jonny Hawkins as like the guy. And I'll have this interview forever, and we'll have that moment of drinking that really rare whiskey from Pennsylvania forever. So this is a lot of fun for me, and I'm just so thankful that you all are joining me, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, or however you're listening to this. Maybe it's on fredminnick.com. I don't know, but man, I'm just thankful to have the moment with you, because this is I'm getting to live the dream. And thank you for the support. I mean that from the very bottom of my heart, especially right now in the middle of the pandemic. So just by listening, you're supporting me, and you're helping me put food on the table for my family. And it is a really incredible, it's a really incredible time right now, because I don't know what life's going to look like in 6 months. I don't think any of us do. But what I do is I talk and I taste and I interview people. And because you're listening and because you're supporting this podcast, I might still be around doing this in 6 months. So I appreciate all the support that you all are giving me. If you'd be so kind just to take an extra moment and give us a review on Apple or Stitcher or Spotify or however you listen to your podcast, give us a review, hit the like button, and just help me keep going, because I don't want to stop. I'm loving this. But that'll do it for this week. Next week, we have Rock and Roll Hall of Famer Daryl Hall. Daryl Hall from Hall & Oates, the most downloaded, listened to, successful duo in the history of music. Hall & Oates. So Daryl Hall, man, that guy had an incredible palate. I mean, we were tasting side by side as if he was a veteran taster. But I appreciate you coming and tuning in. Make sure you're checking me out on all the other.
For more information on Fred's books, articles, and more, just go to fredminnick.com.